Every year, millions of people walk away from Christianity, not in dramatic fashion, not with public announcements, but quietly, closing a chapter of their lives that once defined everything from their morning routines to their deepest sense of identity. This is not a fringe phenomenon. Studies across North America and Europe consistently show that the number of people identifying as Christian is declining, while those identifying as having no religious affiliation continues to rise. These are not statistics without faces. Behind every number is a person who once prayed, who once believed, who once found meaning within the walls of a church. Understanding why people leave requires more than judgment or dismissal. It requires honest, thoughtful examination of the real experiences that drive people away from a faith they once called home. The reasons are layered, deeply personal, and often misunderstood by those who stay. One of the most commonly cited reasons people leave Christianity is the problem of suffering. Theologians call it theodicy, the question of how an all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving God can allow immense pain and evil to exist in the world. For many believers, this question starts as an intellectual curiosity. But when suffering becomes personal, when a child dies, when a loved one battles illness without relief, when prayers seem to echo into silence, the question transforms into something far more urgent. People who once trusted that God had a plan begin to wonder whether any plan could justify the depth of human anguish they witness or experience. For some, the answers offered by church leaders feel rehearsed and insufficient. Phrases like, "God works in mysterious ways," or "everything happens for a reason," can feel dismissive rather than comforting. Over time, the inability to reconcile a loving God with a painful world becomes a breaking point, and faith begins to erode not through rebellion, but through honest intellectual and emotional exhaustion. Another powerful driver of departure is the gap between what Christianity preaches and what some of its most visible representatives practice. Scandals involving church leaders, ranging from financial corruption to deeply disturbing cases of abuse, have shattered the trust of countless believers. When someone places their spiritual well-being in the hands of a pastor, priest, or ministry, and that trust is violated, the wound goes far deeper than disappointment. It strikes at the very foundation of their faith. But hypocrisy does not always come in the form of headline-making scandals. Sometimes it is the subtle, everyday inconsistencies. The congregation member who speaks of love on Sunday and spreads cruelty on Monday. The church that preaches generosity while hoarding resources. The community that claims to welcome all while quietly excluding those who do not fit a certain mold. For many people, these repeated experiences create a profound dissonance. They begin to ask whether the institution itself is the problem, or whether the faith it claims to represent has been fundamentally distorted. Either conclusion can lead someone toward the exit. As access to education and scientific information has expanded, many people find themselves navigating a growing tension between what they were taught in church and what they learn in classrooms, books, and through their own research. The conflict between evolutionary biology and creationist teachings, between cosmological science and Genesis narratives, between psychological understanding of human behavior and traditional theological explanations, these tensions are real and significant for many believers. It is important to note that many Christians successfully integrate their faith with scientific understanding, viewing the two as complementary rather than contradictory. However, for others, particularly those raised in more literalist traditions, the cognitive dissonance becomes too great to sustain. When a person is told they must choose between intellectual honesty and religious belief, a significant number will choose the former. Higher education, in particular, has been identified in multiple studies as a factor associated with religious disaffiliation, not because universities are hostile to faith, but because exposure to diverse ideas and critical thinking frameworks naturally prompts deeper questioning. Christianity, like all major religions, carries with it a set of moral teachings and social positions that have evolved, or in some cases resisted evolution, over centuries. For a growing number of people, particularly younger generations, Certain traditional Christian stances on issues such as gender identity, sexual orientation, women's roles in leadership, and racial justice feel not only outdated but actively harmful. When a person who identifies as part of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community hears from their church that their identity is sinful, the message is not merely theological, it is deeply personal. Many individuals have described the experience of being told by their faith community that who they are is fundamentally wrong as one of the most painful experiences of their lives. Similarly, those who have watched churches remain silent or even complicit in the face of racial injustice find it increasingly difficult to remain part of an institution they feel has failed its own moral calling. For these individuals, leaving is not an abandonment of spirituality, but a refusal to participate in what they perceive as institutionalized harm. Ironically, one of the things Christianity promises most, genuine community and belonging, is also one of the reasons people leave. Many former believers describe feeling profoundly lonely within their congregations. Despite attending services regularly, joining small groups, and participating in church activities, they never felt truly known or accepted. The culture of presenting a polished, spiritually together version of oneself, what some have called the Sunday performance, left little room for authentic struggle, doubt, or vulnerability. When people bring their real questions and real pain into a church environment and are met with platitudes, judgment, or pressure to simply pray harder and trust more, they often feel more isolated than they did before. The community they were promised turns out to be conditional, available only as long as they conform to certain beliefs and behaviors. Once they begin to question or diverge, the warmth can disappear with striking speed, reinforcing the sense that the belonging was never truly unconditional. Perhaps the most overlooked reason people leave Christianity is the simplest one. They stop believing. Not because of a single traumatic event, not because of a scandal, not because of a political disagreement, but because over time, through reading, reflection, and lived experience, the core claims of the faith no longer hold the same conviction they once did. Doubt is a natural part of any deeply held belief system, and many Christians navigate it and emerge with a renewed or refined faith. But for others, doubt is not a temporary storm to weather. It is a gradual clearing of fog. They begin to see the Bible as a human document rather than a divine one. They begin to question the historical claims of the resurrection. They begin to wonder whether the God they prayed to was a construct shaped by culture, family, and tradition, rather than a living reality. This kind of departure is often the quietest and the most misunderstood. It is not anger. It is not rebellion. It is simply the honest conclusion of a mind that followed its questions wherever they led, and found itself standing outside the faith it once called home. Understanding this reality, without condemnation or dismissal, is the first step toward genuine dialogue between those who stay and those who leave.